Ooh, I see some good. I'm going to move some around so we can see them better. So I'm using my tool here. Okay, so you bought a car for $18,519. What do you tell your friends? So some people are saying 19. So I'm going to move all the 19s together just so we can kind of see what people said there. Okay, so this group of people saying 19. One person said 20. Oh, here's another 19. Okay. Then we had a couple say 18.5. Okay. And then we had someone say about 18.6. Okay, so here are groups of people. None of these answers are wrong. All of these answers involved some kind of rounding, some kind of estimating. You might be the person that tells your friend, I spent $18,519 exactly, if you want to be super precise. But we normally don't talk like that, right? In everyday language. We do some kind of estimating or rounding. So the people that said 18,500, what they did is they rounded to the nearest 100. So I'm going to come over here. So this person, oops, get my tool going on here. So these people rounded to the nearest 100. And we'll talk about the specific steps here to the nearest 100. So the 5 is in the hundreds place. I can't write. Sometimes Blackboard won't pick up my stylus very well. And today apparently is a day where it's not picking up my stylus very well. And I spelled hundreds wrong. Okay, well, that says hundreds. I can't erase. Okay, so they rounded to nearest hundreds. The person who said 18,600, so what they did is a more informal way of rounding. It doesn't really follow the rules of mathematical rounding, but they also rounded to the nearest 100. But what they did is they said they paid a little more than 500, so they're just going to round up. They're going to say, you know, if they said that 18,500, that was not enough money, so they just rounded up to 18,600, which is totally fine. So this is like an informal way of rounding. It didn't really follow the math rules, but that's okay. The people who said 1,900, they rounded to the nearest 1,000. To the nearest 1,000. So here's my thousands place right here. Okay, here's my thousands place. So they rounded that 18,000 plus extra up to 19,000. And the person who said 20,000, thank you for saying that. I was hoping someone would say 20,000. They rounded to the nearest 10,000 place. 10,000. 10,000s place. And none of these answers are wrong. We're going to go through the specific mathematical steps for formal rounding. MyMathLab is a machine. It's going to do some formal rounding here. So if you had did the informal answer, MyMathLab would count it wrong, just heads up. But in real life, I would know exactly what you meant, right? So let's talk about the rules for rounding. Okay, so good estimates, everyone. So rules for rounding. To know rounding, you need to know place value. So in your notes, provided a place value chart. Right now, we're only going to deal with whole numbers. No decimal numbers yet. So these are your whole numbers. Later, we'll have a decimal place, and you'll have your tenths place, and your hundredths place, and your thousands place. You'll have decimal place values. But right now, we're just going to deal with whole numbers. And these are your rules for rounding. Okay, I have them formally written in your handout because that's kind of like your textbook, right? If you need to go back and refer. But here are the basic steps. The basic steps are you need to locate the digit in the indicated place value. If you're being asked to round to the hundreds place, you need to locate the digits in the hundreds place. If you're being asked to round to the thousands place, you need to locate the digit in the thousands place. That's your first job. So you need to really know this place value chart. So you have commas here. The first three place values are technically your ones place, but they go all the way up to hundreds. And then the next group of three are your thousands place. Then the next group of three, is your millions. And then if you would go into billions, trillions, and so on. Okay. So know this place value chart. Then the way you round is based on the number behind the digit. that you're rounding, okay? So the next step is look at the digit to the left. So if you're rounding to the thousands place, for example, so let's do just the thousands place. I'm going to erase the star there. Okay, so let's just look at our thousands place. Oh, and it is not going away. There it goes. So when you look to the left, if I'm rounding to the thousands place, then I would look at the digit to the left. If the digit to the left is 4 or less, then the digit you're rounding is going to stay the same. If the digit to the left is 5 or higher, then the digit you're rounding increases by 1. And then the last step says everything else, all remaining digits to the right are going to go to zeros. So everything to the right is going to go to a 0. So these steps are just there for you to reference. We're actually going to do some examples together. But if you forget when you're doing your homework, you can come back here to this place value chart and to these steps. Okay, so let's try some problems together and then we'll see if there's any questions. Okay, so I'm going to walk you through these steps on number 1 here. So let's say the cost of a car is $28,712. So this first question is just asking when comparing thousands of dollars. So let me rewrite my number here. And we want to compare thousands of dollars. So I'm going to go to my thousands place. This is my thousands place. So we have ones, tens, hundreds, thousands. Okay, so we're in my thousands place. When comparing that, the cost of the car is between $28,000 and $29,000. So which one is it closest to? $28,712. Is that bumping it closer to $28,000 or closer to $29,000? Someone can throw an answer in the chat for me. Yeah, 29, right? So this is closer to 29,000. So did you need any formal rules for rounding for that? No, right? Your intuition just told you 28,712 is closer to 29,000. So if I'm rounding to the thousand, I go to 29. But let's follow our formal rules here. So following our rules to round to the nearest thousand. So I look to the left. This digit is to the left. That digit is 5 or higher. So 5 or higher. If it's 5 or higher, the rule says you add 1 to that digit. So this digit is going to turn to a 9. And then you change everything else behind it to a 0. So that's how you get that formal answer of the 2 was already part of the number, the 8 changed to a 9, and everything else changed to a 0. So those are your steps for rounding. So right now, go to your status. You know, at the bottom of the page where the microphone is and the camera, you have your profile picture. It might be a generic person or it might be your picture. Click on that and change your status to show me how you feel on this because I can't see your face. So how are you feeling right now about this rounding? Got some happy faces. Good, good. And remember, participating in polls or changing your status when I ask you, it gets recorded for me by Blackboard so I can give you participation points. Cool, cool, cool. Awesome. Okay, so we're feeling good on this one. Let's try one more. Okay, let's look at this one. So now, ooh, this car only costs $7,412. Now be really careful on MyMathLab that you're reading the problem very, very carefully. Now it's asking us to compare hundreds of dollars. So let me rewrite my value here. And we're going to compare hundreds. So I need to locate the hundreds place. So ones, tens, hundreds. This is my hundreds place. Hundreds. So which two values, if we're considering just the hundreds place, which two values is going to be between? So we know we're going to have 7,000. But if we're just thinking about the hundreds place, it's going to be between 400 and 500, right? If I'm just considering hundreds place. It's between 7,400 and 7,500. But which one is it closest to? If I'm just looking at 412, is 412 closer to 400 or is 412 closer to 500? Yeah, it's closer to the 400, right? So this one's going to be closer to the 7,400. So your intuition told you that without any mathematical rules. But now I'm going to follow the mathematical rules because some of them get a little trickier than this, right? So here are the mathematical rules. The mathematical rule says to look to the left. So here's the digit to the left. The digit to the left is 4 or less. So basically what that tells us is that technically you're adding 0 to that. But what it means is that number is going to stay the same. It is going to stay the same. And then everything else after that is still going to turn to zeros. So mathematically, you're going to get the same answer that your intuition told you. That 7,000 wasn't altered. The 4 that was in the hundreds place is going to stay the same because the digit to the left was 4 or less and everything else changed to zeros. So when in doubt, trust your gut or follow your math rules, right? Okay, so now we're going to try some of these like in a word problem scenario like you're going to see on my math lab. Before I do that real quick, show me your face, go to your status, show me how you're feeling on this question, this rounding. Okay, most got the happy faces. Okay. Awesome. So now let's try this in the context of some word problems. Now here's the deal with these word problems, y'all. You have to read very carefully and follow the order of the instructions exactly how my math lab tells you to do it. If not, you could get the problem wrong. So this is more of a practice in careful reading, which is really important in your next math classes. Especially if you're going to stats. This is more of a practice in careful reading than it really is in rounding, but let's read this problem. Okay, so here we go. Maritza was in a car accident. She needs to estimate her medical costs, car repairs, and lost wages. Round each number to the nearest 10 and estimate the sum. Okay, so you have to do it in that order. You have to round each number to the nearest 10 first, do that first, then find the sum second. If you add them all up and then round, you could get the question wrong. You might luck out and get it right, but you could get it wrong. So you want to round the numbers first, then add to guarantee you get this right so you don't get frustrated. So let me write our values down. So her medical costs. So medical was, I'm writing the real numbers down first, 536. Then repairs were 321. And then her lost wages was 295. So just to reiterate, if you added all these together first, so if I added all these and got some number and then rounded, even though that's probably what we might do in real life, you will get it wrong on my math lab. What you need to do is follow the steps. It says to round first. So I'm going to round each of these to the nearest 10. So the tens place is the second digit over from the right. So we're going to round those to the nearest 10, each one of those. Okay. So 536 is closest to 540. The way I did that, yeah, excellent. I looked to the left. It was bigger than 5, so I added 1 to that position. Awesome. So then that's going to round to 54, and then the number after that is going to change to a 0. Yeah, cool. Okay, so I'm going to be quiet for a second and give you a chance to round these next two numbers. Yeah, 320, nice. Yeah, because the next one here, when I looked to the left, it was less than 4 or less than 5, so I technically add nothing. Yeah, and now this last one is tricky though. When I look to the left, it's 5 or bigger, so I'm going to bump that one up. Yeah, awesome. When I bump up the 9, it's going to bump up the 2. Cool. Sweet. Y'all are not going to get tricked on MyMathLab. So that's actually going to bump up to 300. Then you're going to add these all up. So when you add these all up, that's 0, 6, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Or just use a calculator if you're afraid. Yeah, when in doubt, type it out. But this is going to be what you enter into MyMathLab. Cool, cool, cool. Awesome. And just curious, let me grab my calculator. I'm going to see if we would have lucked out. I'm going to add up the numbers as they were given to us and see if we would have lucked out on this one. 321, 295. If I had added them, oh, no, I would not have, because if I added them all up as they were given, all these numbers added up to 1,152. And then if I rounded that to the nearest 10, and I look behind it, see how that would have, I would have entered 1,150 into MyMathLab and it would have counted it wrong and I would have gotten all frustrated. So make sure you're following those instructions really carefully. Now, in real life, what you should do is round all of those up because you want to make sure you have enough money, right? You would just ignore the rules of math and you would round everything up to like overestimate how much you would need so you don't come up short. But we're in math land right now, so we're going to round that way. Okay, let's try another one. I'm going to read this one and then I'm going to be quiet and let y'all work on it. And don't type anything in the chat or write anything on the screen because I wanted to give everyone think time. So let's look at this one. It says Billy earned $1,562 last week. Of this amount, $319 was withheld for insurance and taxes. Round each number to the nearest 100. Then estimate the difference between the wages earned and the withheld amount. So round, then find the difference. So try it on your own. And then in a minute, I'll ask for people to put answers on the screen. Okay, so in this area, go ahead and start typing your answers. What did y'all get? And remember, when you're typing, it's completely anonymous. I don't know who typed what. I never will know. No one will know. So if you ever get a wrong answer, don't freak out. Okay, so let's see how we did on this one. I saw 1,600 a couple times, so some 1,300s. Okay, let's see. 1,300 seems to be the consensus. So we needed to round first to the nearest 100. So when I did that, the first one would round up to 1,600. And the second one would end up rounding down to 300. And then we were supposed to find the difference, right? So the difference means to subtract. No one added. That's good. I thought someone might get tricked and add. So your final answer, oh, look, I said no one added and I wrote an add sign. So when you subtract that, your final answer should have been $1,300. Excellent. Okay, cool. Awesome. So just be really careful when you're reading these that you follow the order it says or you'll get the question wrong and get frustrated. Okay, cool. There's one more thing we need to talk about with estimating. And it seems to like come out of nowhere in this section because you're not really rounding with the rules of math on this one. It's more of an estimation, but it does involve reading a graph, which we need to dust some cobwebs off of probably. So let's look at this problem. Okay, it says the following graph shows the number of US internet users in millions in a particular region for selected years. So I can see that the horizontal axis here are some selected years. They're odd years, 2001, 2003, 2005, 2007. Oh, this is an old graphic. And then my vertical axis, the height of the graph is telling me the number of internet users in millions. So 220 million, 200 million, and so on. So be really careful with units in general, but especially on MyMathLab. So these numbers vertically are actually in millions. Okay, so let's see what they're asking. What is A asking? A says to estimate the number of internet users in this region in 2007 to the nearest 10 million. Okay, so we need to read the graph to get a number and then make sure that it's in the nearest 10 million. So let's do that. First of all, we need to locate 2007 on this graph. So that would be right here. This is the year 2007. Then the height of the graph is going to tell us the number of internet users. So let's go up and see the height there. So I'm just going up this direction. I'm seeing my height. Okay, so the reason why this is an estimate is we can't read it exactly, right? When I come over here, I didn't draw a very good straight line, but it's somewhere between 180 and 200. So to the nearest 10 million. So I'm going to say like 190. So I'm going to say 190. But if you type 190 into MyMathLab, it's going to count it wrong. Because is it really 190 users? No, right? It needs to be 190 millions. Yeah. So you could just type the word million out, right? This is in millions. But what you'll probably have to do in MyMathLab is actually enter that in the millions place. So you have your hundreds, your thousands, then your millions. And 10 millions is this place right here. This is, you have your millions and your 10 millions. This is your 10 millions place. And since there's zeros behind it, it's been rounded to your 10 millions. Okay. So any questions on A? Go to your status and show me what your face looks like right now. How are you feeling about A? The answer to A being $190 million. Okay, cool. Feeling okay? Most people, it looks like. Awesome. Yeah, those status checks are really, I can't see your faces, so it helps me see your face. And if you're not feeling happy or you're feeling confused, use the status because it'll help me slow down for everyone. Or you can drop something in the chat if you want. Okay, let's try B now. What is B asking? B is asking us to estimate the year. So now my answer needs to be a year when there were 160 million internet users. So here's 160 million. And then I need to backtrack to find the year. So when I go down there, that is this year right here. But do not enter this into MyMathLab. It'll count it wrong. You would have to enter year 2003. You have to interpret the graph. So make sure. How are you feeling on that? So show me a status on how you felt about the answer being 2003 on that one. Cool. Awesome. So you're going to see some estimates like this thrown in with rounding on this homework. Cool. So rounding is estimating using like specific mathematical rules. Estimating is more like real life, kind of eyeballing it, following your gut kind of stuff. Okay. And if you get any of these wrong, because, your answer was right, but MyMathLab interpreted it incorrectly, you can always just click Ask the Instructor, send it to me, and we can take a look together. Okay. I think that's all we had for rounding. Are there any questions? I'll pause for a minute. Are there any questions about rounding or estimating before we jump into the next idea? Okay. And if you're ever, if I ask if there's questions and you're typing in the chat, just raise your hand so I'll know to pause. But it seems like everyone's feeling good on rounding. Okay. Rounding, later on, right now it's like the topic is rounding. That's what we're learning. So everyone's like, yeah, round. And then by like week 3, we get questions wrong on my math lab because of rounding errors. So rounding is this thing that's going to come up again and again in all your math courses. Okay, so here we go. So now we are going to talk a little bit about simplifying expressions. So I have an expression here for us, and I want you to just simplify it. Don't use a calculator, try it on your own, but wait to type your answer until I give you the signal. So what do you think the simplified version of this is? So I'm going to be quiet for a minute, but wait to type your answer. Okay, y'all, go ahead and start typing some answers on the screen. Got 8 written down, 10 by 5. Anyone else? 2, some 8. Got all kinds of answers. What do you think? And remember, this is completely anonymous. Got another vote for 2. Got another 8 going on here. 8. Yeah, we're going to have to see how we're getting all these different answers. And Josh has mentioned in the comments we should follow PEMDAS. And I'll explain what PEMDAS is. But yeah, I'm getting answers all over the place here, right? Mostly either a 2 or an 8. Some of them have 10 times 5, which is 50. So what is the right answer? I don't know. What is the right answer? You've probably seen like memes on social media where they like, you know, I bet you can't figure this out, and they have these expressions, and like everyone has arguments on Facebook about like what the answer should be. And it all comes down to the idea of order of operations. And Joshua typed it there on the screen, PEMDAS. PEMDAS. So we'll talk about what PEMDAS is here. So you might have heard like math is the universal language, right? Which is true all over the world. You know, math is, arithmetic is done differently, but the big ideas of math are the same. However, all over the world, languages are read differently. Some cultures read left to right. Some read right to left. Some cultures read top to bottom. So since their written languages are read differently, we have to have a set of rules that tells us how to read math. And that's what PEMDAS is. PEMDAS is a set of rules that tells us how we're going to read math, how we're going to work math problems. It's like a hierarchy. So let's see which of these answers this was. I don't know. I'm going to go through PEMDAS informally, and then we'll talk about it more formally. So in a minute, I'm going to have all the steps typed out for you here. I might just show them real quick before we pop over. So these are the steps I'm going to walk you through in a minute. But PEMDAS is an acronym. It's an acronym that I didn't learn. I learned a totally different one. But this is the most popular. Oops, this is the most popular one. So let me write it down. My stylus is not picking up on the screen. Give me 1 second. There it goes. Okay, PEMDAS. I love it and I hate it. It's a blessing and a curse. So the P in PEMDAS stands for parentheses. Parentheses are, it's misleading actually, because by parentheses, they mean any grouping symbols. It could be parentheses. It could be brackets. We don't really do curly brackets, but it could be absolute value signs. It could be a square root. A square root groups something. Also, if you have a fraction written out, so say I have 3 plus 2 over 3 times 5, technically a fraction has grouped stuff in the numerator and grouped stuff in the denominator. So it's parentheses is standing for any group of stuff. So even though it's a P, it means grouping symbols, anything grouped together, okay? So that's the first way it's misleading. Then you have exponents. That one's pretty straightforward. If there is an exponential expression, you do that next. Then this is what kills me. This is the one that gets everyone. Then you're going to multiply or divide, whichever comes first from left to right. So if dividing comes first, you might divide first. If multiplying comes first, you multiply. So whichever comes first, either one, as you move from left to right. And then same thing is going to go here for adding or subtracting. It's whichever comes first from left to right. You might subtract first, even though add comes first on our little acronym here. You just go from left to right, whichever happens to come first. So these steps are provided in that note outline for you to go back and refer to if you didn't print this out. But I'm going to go back to that warm-up problem and let's see what the right answer was, right? Or I might give you a second. Now that we've talked about this a little bit, I'm going to go back to that slide. We're going to pause for a minute. Don't write the answer. Now that we've refreshed our memory about PEMDAS, see if your answer changed. See if your answer changed any by doing parentheses first, then exponents, which it didn't have, so you don't have to worry about it, then multiply or divide, then add or subtract, okay? So don't type anything. Let's go back. We're going to pause for a minute. Okay, go ahead and type your answers now. Let's see if the answers changed at all. Yep, I'm seeing a lot more votes for 8 now. Okay, so yeah, 8 I think is the right answer. I haven't really worked it out yet, but yeah, it looks like 8 is the consensus. See how once we all agreed to the rules of PEMDAS, we all are getting the same answer? That's the purpose of order of operations. It's to make us read everything the same way. Okay, so just to go through the steps in case you did not type your answer on the screen or you really weren't sure what the answer was, let's go through the PEMDAS steps on this. So I'm going to rewrite my expression down here where I have some more room to write. Okay. And we are going to write, I always write PEMDAS out to the side and use it like as a little checklist. This is optional. You don't have to do that. But I go down the list. Are there any parentheses involved? No, right? So I'm going to mark it out. Are there any, were there any other grouping symbols? No. Okay. Are there any exponents? No. So now it's just down to multiply or divide. So there is multiplication involved. So I'm going to do that first. 5 times 2 is 10. And what I suggest you do on your homework, even though my math lab doesn't grade your scratch work, right? Write down every step so you get in the habit, because these are the steps you'll want to show on your test so you can get partial credit if you mess up. So the 15 hasn't been touched yet. The subtraction hasn't been touched. The addition hasn't been touched. I'm just rewriting all that. But 5 times 2 turned into a 10. So just take a few seconds to write that next step. So is there any multiplying or dividing left? No. So now I'm going to move on to adding or subtracting. I'm going to do whatever comes first from left to right. So subtraction happened to come first. So 15 minus 10 is 5. I haven't touched the addition yet. Now I'm going to do the plus 3. So yes, the overall answer was an 8. And by showing these steps, it only took a few minutes, but if you show those steps, if you do make a silly mistake, then I can give you partial credit. Okay, let's try another one of these, and then I'm going to put y'all in breakout groups to try some in groups so you might feel more comfortable unmuting and talking to each other. Okay, so before I navigate away from this screen, are there any questions on what I did here? No? Okay, so let's go over to the, oops, I forgot I had put that into my screen. Okay, so now here's one with all the bells and whistles going on. I have everything in PEMDAS. So no one type anything on the screen. I'm going to be quiet for a minute. Try this question, then I'll have you type answers on the screen, okay? Briefly about squaring, when you see a base number, in this case 6, raised to a superscript 2, a power of 2, That's repeated multiplication. So you're going to do the base number 6 multiplied out 2 times. So multiply that out twice. So you should get 36 there. So just as a side example, if it had been 6 cubed, you would have done 6 times 6 times 6. You would have multiplied it out 3 times. I have no idea what that is, so I'm not going to write it down. But yeah, exponents are repeated multiplication. And you should have an exponent button on your calculator that either looks like this, so you would type 6, then hit that button, then 2. And that would give you 36. Or your button might look like this, an X with a Y. It's like a generic base and a generic exponent. Or you might have a button that says X squared. It's like specific for squaring only. There's all kinds of buttons out there on depending on what model of calculator you have. Did that answer your question? I can't remember if it was Alexis. Yeah, Alexis. Cool. Okay, I'm going to give y'all one more minute, and then I'm going to ask you to put answers up on the screen. Okay, I'm going to let you go ahead and start typing your answers anywhere you want. Remember, it's anonymous. You can type it on the screen. Type in the, oh, everyone's saying 3, so maybe that's it. Wow, sweet. Excellent. And just heads up, y'all, if you have a scientific calculator, especially if you have the one I recommended or a Casio that has 2 lines, you can straight up type this entire expression directly into your calculator as you see it. And when you hit enter, it'll tell you the answer. But if you do that, if you don't show your steps, if all your steps are missing, then you're not going to get credit. So I have to test that you know order of operations, but you can always just check by plugging it in your calculator, right? So make sure you're practicing all the steps. So let's see if that was really the answer. So in the notes, I had this kind of scaffolded for us. If we're following PEMDAS, I'll go through this quickly since everyone got the right answer. We'd start with parentheses. We do have parentheses here, so I simplify 1 plus 4 first. That would give me a 5. And I rewrite everything else. We haven't done exponents. We haven't done division. I haven't touched the 9 times 2 yet. I haven't touched the subtraction. So all that got rewritten. Then once I'm done simplifying inside the parentheses, then I go to exponents. So I did have an exponent involved. Our exponent was the 6 squared, which we just talked about. So that'd be 36. And I had that 5 from the previous step. Okay, so once we had that done, once we finished all of our exponents, then we're going to go to multiply or divide whatever happens to come first. And division happened to come before multiplying, so I had to do 36 divided by 9 first to get the 4. Then I'm going to multiply to get the 8. And of course, that 5 was from a previous step. And then once you finish that multiplying and dividing, then you finally go down and do your adding or subtracting. And when you subtract those, you get 3. So good job, y'all. I think you're ready to go into some breakout groups. Cool. If you did not get 3, I'll pause real quick. Are there any questions? And I promise if you have a question, at least one other person does too. So be the brave one and advocate for yourself, especially in this virtual classroom, because I can't see the look of horror on your face right now or the look of confusion. So I'm going to pause and see if anyone has any questions. Okay, so we're going to move into breakout rooms. Oh, I forgot. I want to do one more translating one before we go into breakout groups, because you're going to see some of that in your translating. So we're going to combine what we did on day 1 with translating phrase in English into mathematical symbols, but then it just tacks on this extra step of simplifying that expression, okay, using order of operations. So, it's that careful reading again. So this is just basically asking us to translate the expression and simplify it. One of these expressions is going to involve parentheses and one is not. So let's just read them both first before we try translating them. So this first expression says 6 times 4 minus 3. And B says 6 times the difference of 4 and 3. 6 times 4 minus 3. So don't write anything on the screen, but on your own paper, how do you think you would translate this? 6 times 4 minus 3 versus 6 times the difference of 4 and 3. So don't write anything down. I'm going to be quiet for a second to give you a chance to sketch on your paper. If you get it wrong, that's okay. So let's see what you got here. The one that needs parentheses is actually going to be phrase B. So let's see why that is. So when I look at A and B, they both say 6 times, right? 6 times something. Okay, so this is going to be 6 times something, and this is going to be 6 times something, right? Okay, now what's the difference here? The difference is on A, we're doing 6 times 4, and on B, we're doing 6 times the difference. So on A, the only thing getting multiplied is 6 times 4. I'm literally doing 6 times 4. Then I'm going to minus 3 from that answer. But on B, I'm doing 6 times the difference of two things. It's the difference of what? The difference of the number 4 and the number 3. The number 4 and the number 3. So I had to use parentheses to group the difference together. So I needed to use parentheses to force that difference to happen first, right? To group the difference together. And the order of operations will be really different now. So I need to do the 4 minus 3 first to get the difference. So the parentheses are forcing me to find that difference first. The difference between 4 and 3 is 1. So I'm really doing 6 times 1 in this example. So my overall simplified result is a 6. But the order of operations on the previous example, I'm doing 6 times 4. I multiply before. I'm going to multiply first, and then I'm going to subtract. Because there's no parentheses there forcing me to subtract first. I'm going to do the multiply first. So when I multiply first, 6 times 4 is 24. Then I'm going to subtract the 3, which would be 21. So how are you feeling on either translating these or doing the order of operations? I'm going to pause real quick. Are there any questions? Show me a status. Show me your face. Okay, mostly happy faces out there. Were there any questions about how I knew to use parentheses? Okay, cool. Someone thinks we can go a little faster. That's good. If you ever think we need to go slower, let me know that too. Okay, cool. Now we're going to go into breakout groups since there aren't any questions on this one. Yeah, so Corey was saying she was a little confused until it got explained. And, and that's how a lot of this is. When you're in your breakout groups, math is a language. You really got to talk it out. So if you're confused, I promise someone else is too. So make sure you speak up and you ask. And after I explain something, if you're still confused, if my explanation didn't clear it up, still raise your hand or ask, because you're taking one for the team, right? You're helping yourself and you're helping others. And sometimes you'll follow along and be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. and then you try it again on your own and you're confused, talk it out. Reach out to me, a tutor, a classmate. Math is a language. You got to communicate with another human about it, okay? So, okay. So let's see. We're going to break out into some groups here to work a whole bunch of these on your own. So just like last time, I'm going to break you out into groups. And then every few minutes, I'll send some answers through the chat just to make sure you're on the right track. If you need a tiebreaker or there's different answers in the group and you don't know who's right, raise your hand and I'll pop into the groups. I'll also randomly be popping into groups. So there's that too. And, and the groups are going to be randomly assigned, but remember what group number you're going into, because I'm going to pull you back into the main room. And then later I want you to go back to the same group so you don't have to meet new people. So, okay, so I'm going to break you out into random groups, introduce yourselves and stuff when you get in there. And then after a few minutes, I'm going to share the PowerPoint so you can work through these together. Okay. So any questions before we go into breakout groups? ACC, Alexis, is not offering in-person tutoring. However, we, in the syllabus, I have links to, how to get to the online tutoring for the Learning Lab. So you can schedule like a 30-minute time slot for one-on-one tutoring with the Learning Lab. I also linked one-on-one tutoring with our instructional associates, and they are awesome. They're adjunct instructors that teach this class all the time. So they know, they're really familiar with the material. So they can give you some one-on-one tutoring. They have more like drop-in hours, where you can go in anytime in their hours and get help. The Learning Lab, you have to schedule time. And there's also my office hours. So if you're, some of y'all haven't taken a math class in years and you have more cobwebs to dust off. Some of y'all took it over the summer. Some of y'all are coming straight from maybe high school where you just got done seeing it. So really reach out and get help with those tutors. Yeah, so it's listed in the syllabus. I think I also posted it in a Blackboard announcement, the different links. Any other questions before we jump out into breakout groups? Okay, well, I'm going to move us into groups. It's going to be random. When you get in there, say hi to your group mates, introduce yourselves. Feel free when you're in the groups to unmute yourself, because it'd be easier to talk about it. But also when you get into your group, so I'm going to share a slide right here. Here's your first slide. Maybe introduce yourselves, say hi. I'll share this so y'all can type on the screen, but maybe wait, let's say maybe 2 minutes to give everyone a chance to try number 4. Then y'all can type your answers on the screen. And if they're the same, great, move on to the next one. If they're different, then talk it out. Then talk about which one is the right one and help each other. And if you don't know, then raise your hand and I'll pop in the room. I'll also send answers out through the chat. Okay, so here we go. We're about to go in the groups. Oh, you know what? Maybe I should do, I'm going to do groups of 3 in case someone's technology isn't working. You're not left all by yourself. So here we go. Groups of 3 starting now. Okay, so all you have to know, just to repeat for the camera here since I wasn't recording, that the square root is a button on your calculator, and technically a square root undoes squaring. So 3 squared would be 9, so to reverse it, the square root of 9 would take you back to the 3. But if that's not sinking in, that's okay. Just find the button on your calculator. So here we go. So according to PEMDAS, and of course I'm going to rewrite my little PEMDAS over here. According to PEMDAS, we need to do parentheses first, but heads up, that's any grouping symbol. And see how the square root grouped the 2 and the 7? So I need to do the 2 plus 7 first. So when I rewrite this, I'm going to have 6 squared divided by 4 times 2 minus square root of 9. All I did was what was grouped together. The 2 plus 7 is grouped together. So I've taken care of my p. Now I need to do my exponent next. We do have an exponent here that's touching the 6. So 6 times 6 is 36. So I'm going to rewrite my expression. So now I have 36 divided by 4 times 2 minus square root of 9. And technically, y'all, I don't want to freak you out or anything, but a square root is technically an exponent. I don't know if you remember this from algebra, and you don't have to, but we can rewrite square root of 9 as 9 to the 1/2 power. But you don't need to know that. You just need to know what's square root of 9. The square root of 9 is 3. So technically, when you're doing exponents, you're also doing square roots. Or you can do the square root back in the grouping symbol step, right? Because the square root grouped that together. But just know it's a button on your calculator. So however you think about it, you just end up getting a 3 there. Don't get too bogged down in the algebra. Yeah, I like the 3 better, right? And it's simplified because there's less symbols. So I'm going to pause right here. Are there any questions on how I knew the square root of 9 was 3, or how I knew that 6 squared was 36? No? Okay, so now we're going to go on. Now we're just going to multiply or divide whichever comes first from left to right. So dividing happened to come first. So I'm going to do 36 divided by 4 first. That's 9. I haven't touched the multiply 2 yet. I haven't touched the subtract 3. Now I'm going to multiply 9 times 2, and that will give me 18. And then finally, now that I've done all that multiplying and dividing, now I can finally go and do my add or subtract. So when I subtract those, I'm going to get 15. Okay, so let's pause there. Are there any questions? Oh, Rachel said, I also had a question about number 5 because none of us got the right answer. Okay, I can go back to number 5. Cool. Okay, Ibba's asking me for me to hold on real quick before I go back. Yeah, before I go back to number 5, Rachel, I'm going to work number 9 since it's on the same slide. And once I move away from the slide, it erases what I write. Cool. Yeah, Lauren's also confused on number 5. So let's do number 9 here together, and then we'll go back and do number 5 together and as a class. Okay, so 9. Let me write out PEMDAS. We always do PEMDAS. PEMDAS. Okay, Corey's happy now. Okay, we see some parentheses, right? So we have parentheses. So there's actually a lot of grouping stuff going on. So remember, P is any grouping. So we definitely have parentheses, but also the numerator is being grouped together and the denominator is being grouped together. So I need to simplify the numerator till I get one answer. Then I need to simplify the denominator till I get one number, and then I'll do top divided by bottom. Fractions are another way to write division, or you can reduce it in your calculator. I'll show you both ways. So I'm going to think just about my numerator first. Let's think just about the numerator. I'm going to treat it like it was its own problem here. So my numerator says 400, parentheses, 60 minus 30, parentheses squared. Okay, so let's simplify just the numerator. So when I'm simplifying the numerator, I need to do my parentheses first, 60 minus 30, okay? So that's going to be 400, and then in my parentheses, I really have 60 minus 30 is 30. So I've taken care of the parentheses that are in the numerator. Then I need to take care of exponents next. So Only the 30 is being touched by the exponent. The 400 is not involved at all. So the exponent only works on what it immediately touches. It's touching this parentheses, so only the stuff in the parentheses gets squared. So I'm only going to do 30 times 30. And 30 times 30 is 900. So